let's dive into what we thought of the overall match. Chris, what were your initial thoughts after watching the match?
So I was pretty excited because I love Kenny Omega and
Yeah, I put you on. I
uh
put you on.
yeah, I mean you put me on to
Will Ospreay too.
Will Ospreay as well, who's an incredible wrestler.
Hmm.
He's so talented.
Has only gotten better.
Yeah, and so like I kind of have, I mean I guess we'll like get into more of it, but my initial reaction to the match was like, yeah, it was pretty good. That was just like my
Yeah.
immediate feeling of like, yeah, that was a good match. I mean, it was a great match. I didn't have the reaction that seems like a lot of people did of like that was the greatest wrestling match of all time ever.
Hmm.
I didn't really feel that way about it, but I
Definitely seen that.
was,
Yep.
yeah, but I was like, yeah, it was a really great match
Mm.
between arguably the best wrestler of all time and a guy who is certainly on track to be in that conversation as well.
Hmm.
I think one of my like immediate thoughts was like, man, Kenny Omega in Japan just feels right.
It does.
Like he's he's been good in AEW and like part of it's not fair because he was like hurt for some of his AEW run so far.
Hmm.
But even like throughout the whole like belt collector gimmick, I don't know, like seeing him back in New Japan, and this is not like from a visual standpoint, but something about it just seemed like he was happier. Like he
Yeah.
was in like a different, I don't know. It's kind of like Shinsuke, although that's a little bit different. But when he faced Muda a few days ago, like,
Hmm.
man, there's something about it, man. Kenny in the Tokyo Dome, like at Wrestle Kingdom, like it just, and it felt like he took it to another level. Like he was I think part of it too, my reaction to this match was like I haven't watched anything from New Japan in a while.
Hmm.
So I was definitely a little bit like rusty on the style of matches that they work. But man, like man, some of this match was just brutal, absolutely
Yeah.
brutal.
It was
But
indeed.
I did enjoy it. I just didn't have the reaction that a lot of people did of like that was the greatest match I've ever seen.
Hmm.
But some of that feeling did change afterwards, but I want to hear what you thought of the match first.
I definitely found the match to be very entertaining. And in fact, I would say it was great. It was a great match. It was an amazing match. It was an incredible match.
Hell yeah.
Um, I would give it 5 stars myself. Just because of the brutality and the insaneness and the story it told of Will being this passionate guy who's given his all and body and mainly passion because I did see that first promo and it wasn't until
Hmm.
you sent the post match promo, but the 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 pre promo,
Hmm.
it's just like there's that passion. It's the passion, and it's the passion that he kept bringing that started this rivalry, like calling him out, saying he's the best bout machine. Um, whereas Kenny, that was his gimmick. One of his other gimmicks is the best bout machine. Besides being the cleaner and
Hmm.
the Bullet Club leader, Will took that from him, and rightfully so in a way. It worked. The passion was fanned out by the cleaner. The cleaner came in and fanned out that passion, that flame. He was the hunter, and Will was the nice seasoned lion now.
Hmm.
No longer the young lion, no longer the young Will Ospreay that we knew as the aerial assassin. He was the guy and one of the faces of New Japan, and he was trifled. In fact, he was brutalized. Like there was no way. I want even yes, the results were spoiled for me. But even then, like I'm watching him, like maybe there's that, and maybe there's like some a reason. There's gonna be a way for him to come back. And I said to myself, like, yeah, oh my god, he's gonna do it. And there's times where I forgot about the result, even with
Hmm.
even if it wasn't, even if I knew the result going in, the match was still great. And I'm like, maybe there was a mistake, and like, oh, maybe they called an audible or something. Like, oh, Kenny has to go. No, this was the plan all along. Kenny was gonna go over, and they were gonna continue the story. because of how much brutality Kenny brought to him. And it's crazy because like I love what Don pointed out on commentary. And I know you had some thoughts about this, and I really want to break it down too much, but I just kind of want to get to the meat and bones.
Yeah,
And this
man.
is part of the meat and bones for me at least was
Yeah.
like saying how like he was leaner in a way. Kenny was leaner, and when he was in his heavyweight run, he looked like a heavyweight. He was beefier. His chest and
Yeah.
arms looked huge. Just everything was huge, and he could still move like a damn cruiserweight, like a light heavyweight, like a lighter dude. And he's not that tall of a guy either. He's like 6 foot, 6'1".
Hmm.
Um, but here he looked on par with Will. In fact, Will almost looked like he looked a bit bigger at
Hmm.
times, and Will has gotten bigger, and in the right way, in other parts of his body to fill in for heavyweight because he's also been the heavyweight champion now. He used to be a junior
Hmm.
heavyweight champion. So it tells this story too of like two guys that followed the same paths in a way, like went from junior heavyweight all the way up to heavyweight and won the big one. However, with Will, it's more tragic because he won it and then the pandemic hit. And yeah, so like that, there was like some hot potatoing there. And it's funny because he actually came out. I saw him in an indie show here in the city, the first show back at HOG, and he had the New Japan belt. He had
Mm.
it. It was cool. That was his gimmick. Like he like I never lost his title. I'm the true king and the true champion of New Japan and all championships that he had, Rev Pro and other ones that he had for the indie scene. So it's told this story of this now season line being thwarted by the best bout machine, the cleaner, the veteran, the guy who's not a lion but the hunter of lions. And
Is it
he awoken that. Will
is
awoken that.
is I'm sorry to jump in, but is
Yeah,
it
yeah.
crazy to say that Kenny Omega is the one that put New Japan on the map for like
A lot
a
of
a large percentage of people that have gotten into it over the last, amount of time that
I
coincides with when he
I
got there?
oddly enough, yes. So me personally, I want to say he definitely drew my interest more
I
because
don't want to put anyone else down, like the Bullet Club, the AJ
yeah, no,
Finn, like
absolutely not.
Shinsuke,
Like when I found
credible.
when I found out who Shin and Finn were like and where they like what were they who they were before WWE, like I was interested in that and I watched some of their matches. I watched the not 5-star match he had with AJ that should have been a 5-star match. Meltzer got it wrong. That was an
Yeah.
incredible fucking match. Um, I watched Shinsuke face Andrade before he was Andrade when he was under the mask for the IC title in CMLL. That was a great match. So I went like on a deep indie dive, and that's how I came back into wrestling. I've said it before in the podcast is through indie
Hmm.
wrestling. So yes, I was interested in it when I heard about this guy Kenny Omega, like, and then he broke Meltzer's rating record with when he had the first match with Okada, and I'm just like, okay, there's some. I think I'm watching the new the new face of wrestling, not WWE, not Impact, not these other second, third, and fourth tier companies. I'm talking about the entire face of wrestling.
Hmm.
And for a bit, he was. I think he was. I don't know if he ever got PW Insider's Wrestler of the Year. That's okay if he didn't because at some point he was my Wrestler of the Year, and I was rooting for him to win the big one, and he did. Did it go his way? Not entirely, only because he had a foot out the door, and
Hmm.
and obviously they would, that's backstage politics. Not gonna get into it, but yes, I agree that statement's kind of valid. Um, the reason people got into or further got into indie wrestling or further got into New Japan wasn't for maybe for Finn or for AJ or for anybody. They were already long gone. It's because of the juniors, or even better, it was because of Kenny, Kenny, and what he was doing with the Young Bucks, or was the
Yeah.
Young Bucks that got you? And either way, one or the other got you into New Japan or got you into indie wrestling. For me, it was a combination, but fully, yeah, it's hard for me not to say like, yeah, I think it was New Japan or excuse me, Kenny that got me fully into New Japan. Yes, I was already kind of interested. I already knew about New Japan growing up, seeing them do stuff with CMLL and CMLL doing stuff for New Japan. So it was already kind of intertwined for me. But
Hmm.
definitely like got fully invested into New Japan and why New Japan was for me the number one company instead of WWE.
Oh yeah, they were on top for a while for sure. Okada, Omega, Ibushi, when all those
Yeah,
guys
or
were.
right, or you can also even argue like NXT and New Japan were like right neck and neck, but New Japan was
Yeah,
putting out like 5-star, 6-star matches that
yeah.
no one,
When they got
no
Chris
the casuals.
Jericho,
Yes, that too.
yeah, Chris Jericho and Cody and the Bucks, and yeah, I mean,
It just felt
yeah,
real, and that's what I told you about. Like watching this, it just felt like a brutalized, real sporting event. It wasn't MMA.
yeah.
It was just a fight. It was a real fight, sanctioned fight with a man or with a referee named Red Shoes at the helm, watching this all happen. And
That
yeah,
this is actually a really good segue into kind of what I wanted to talk about
yeah,
with this match. And like you and everyone else is totally justified in saying that this is 5 stars, this is 10 stars, 15, the greatest wrestling
mm-hmm,
match of all time, whatever. Like totally justified. These are two of the greatest wrestlers probably that we will ever see.
mm-hmm,
And I think Kenny Omega, like I was a really big Shawn Michaels fan. Like when I was getting into wrestling, like to me, he was the like best wrestler that I had seen.
mm-hmm.
But I think Kenny Omega cumulatively is probably, in my opinion, the greatest wrestler of all time, just from a pure like
Wow,
talent standpoint. I don't even think it's that close, if I'm being honest.
really? We've never
Yeah,
talked like this bluntly. Wow.
well, like there are, it's one of those like I don't want to get too much into it, but there's like a commonality when you like look at a lot of really great matches and like what
Mm-hmm.
if you care about star ratings, which we like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But Kenny Omega is a very common thread in a lot of those matches.
Mm-hmm.
And like even just seeing what he brought to this match, like this was an actual dream match. Like you let me know that these guys faced each other a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
In a, not as like much of
Bigger
bright
stage,
lights.
not a big stage. Yeah.
Yeah, but this just yeah, and like in wrestling, there's so many dream matches that we always wanted and that like you just don't get because guys are at different companies or they just miss each other. Someone's a little bit older, someone's a little bit younger, and there is an age gap between these two guys.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that Kenny was like still able to do most of the stuff that he does is crazy. Also because I didn't know he was capable of doing some of that stuff anymore, because of
Right.
injuries. But what I wanted to say about this match was, I guess after I watched it, I was like, that was really great. I still think I like Cassidy versus Will Ospreay more because that was just one of my favorite
Yeah.
matches.
I said the same thing to you. It was like,
Yeah.
because but they
But I
held
was
back.
like, yeah, but I was like, that was a great match. And then I started like, because again, I don't really pay that much attention to New Japan. Like I'm familiar with some of the guys at the top of the card.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really like know much until Wrestle Kingdom pops up and I'm like, oh, I'll check out like who's gonna face each other. Like there's obviously gonna be some great matches.
Yeah.
I went and I watched the post-match interview and I sent it to you because I was like, dude, is Will Ospreay acting? Because like I really
Mm-hmm.
can't tell.
I can't tell.
um
He's probably just a really good actor.
and yeah, and then I watched the pre-match
Mm-hmm.
press conference that they had with each other. And then I started watching like just interviews that Will Ospreay had done recently
Yeah.
about this match. And there's like very few instances in wrestling where a storyline
Mm-hmm.
to me overtakes the quality of the matches involved in the storyline. And like the first thought that came to mind when I was thinking about this was the bloodline. It was like the bloodline story is so good that I don't care about the match. Like the matches are good, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't care because I'm just like the story is so good.
Yeah.
Like the matches are just a byproduct of the fact that it's a wrestling storyline. So you have to
Soap
have
opera
matches.
for you.
But the more I started watching, like the more I was listening to Will Ospreay, and like we talked about this of like it's I cannot tell if they actually don't like each other.
I
Like
can't either.
I think that I really do truly think there is a part of both of them that doesn't like the other one. Like based on everything that Will Ospreay was saying in interviews, like I guess, sort of off the record, but you never really know with wrestlers if they're like kind of staying in character.
Hmm.
But based on some of the stuff he was saying, it just sounds to me like he doesn't like if you asked him point blank, he respects Kenny Omega, he just doesn't like him. And I think that, the more I thought about this match was like, I think what makes it even better to me now after I've watched it, and I should probably watch it again, is the story surrounding those two, like what led to that match. And like in New Japan, like we saw, it was like with the Bullet Club, it was dominoes all the time.
Hmm.
It was like Finn is in charge, then AJ's in charge, then Kenny's in charge, then Adam Cole shows up. That like it just everybody, there's always a new leader. Someone's betraying somebody.
Yeah.
But Kenny is the first guy who went back. Like every time somebody, and Will Ospreay wasn't involved in the Bullet Club, but
No.
every time somebody was like a big name in Japan, at least and became a big name in the West, like they would leave and then a new person would, a new American, Canadian, whatever, somebody from the West would be in Japan and they would become a big deal, or in this case, Europe, and they
Hmm.
would become a big deal. But none of them ever went back.
Right.
Like just because AJ Styles got really popular in Japan, like and then he left. Like AJ didn't go back to Japan to say to Kenny, like, "Whoa, dude, like you're not the number one guy. Like it's still me, even though I'm not here anymore."
Right.
Like, and so to me, like what I really started to get into with this story was like, this is a guy who was at the top of the world in New Japan and left, started a new company with his best friends. Makes total sense.
Hmm.
And then this other guy started to come up and like all of a sudden he was breaking all of the Dave Meltzer star ratings and he was just casually, wrestling 5 matches in 5 days and always, match of the year with literally everybody. And like it feels like there's a part of the real person Kenny Omega who's kind of jealous, who's like seeing this guy across the pond, who's like potentially on track to overtake him in
I
like
mean, he got the championship quicker than Kenny did and
it
younger.
just dude, everything after this match and like everything I watched about the match beforehand was just like there was an element of Will Ospreay, and I love talking about wrestling like it's real, especially when the matches feel very real
Yeah.
and the stories. But there's an element of like Will Ospreay based on I went back and watched the promo him and Kenny had in AEW, and there was a lot of stuff said in that promo that I think they both honestly feel. Um, but there's a part of like me that feels like Will Ospreay in the story of this match, like underestimated Kenny Omega. Like Kenny Omega is 10 years older than Will Ospreay. He's coming off an injury. Like he wasn't, the same explosive wrestler that he was in New Japan.
Hmm.
And then there's an element of Kenny Omega coming back to, sort of like the kingdom that he built. And just, it was like a man in there against a boy. It was just like a 40-minute ass kicking. It was this guy that thought he was better than the best, maybe the best wrestler to come to New Japan ever. And then that guy came
Hmm.
back to New Japan and beat the shit out of him. And just like, there's this like visceral spot in the match where
Hmm.
Kenny is just like bashing Will's head, like his bloody head through the already broken table. And it's just like, and that's just how New Japan matches are. But it was like that moment where I'm just like, Will Ospreay is just getting his ass kicked. Like, this is
Hmm.
not a competitive match. He's not gonna win. Like, this is Kenny Omega just pulling up, being like, I still run this whole fucking company. I can come in here, whoop your ass, take your
Hmm.
belt, leave you bleeding, and then I'm just gonna peace out. And like, ah, there's, like we talked about, they probably left some stuff, out of this match because they are definitely going to be doing it at least one more time.
Yes, that's going to be 20-star matches.
Well, I'm always
Easily.
like kind of divided on that because like I don't mind guys like leaving some stuff out because they want to sell a rematch.
Hmm.
But then I always think back to like Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson, and they had that classic like match that ended in a draw, and then we just never got another one.
Hmm.
And I was like, fuck, like sometimes you leave something on the table, and because you're like, oh, we're gonna do another one. Oh, we're gonna do two more, three more. Like, yeah, maybe it will be like him and Okada where they just wrestle each other all the time. But then there's always that risk of like, what if Will Ospreay gets hurt, like Gargano and Ciampa, where it's like they had this whole story planned out, and then somebody gets hurt, and all of a sudden you're like,
Hmm.
okay, never mind. Like it's, I guess we'll have to fucking scrap this and come up with something else. So part of me is like, damn, I really hope they get to actually have at least one more match because
Yeah.
there's so much with this story of like, I don't know. I guess it's almost like a gatekeeper. I don't know how, if you feel similarly, but like Kenny Omega kind of gatekeeping the, being the king of New Japan. And like to the point where he like came back,
Right.
beat the guy who thought he was like hot shit, and like didn't like beat him convincingly.
Hmm.
Like this wasn't like, oh, on another day, like could have gone the other direction. It was like, no, man, you got just whooped. You got
Yeah.
squashed, bro. Like, and it just like what it did to Will Ospreay, who was just phenomenal selling in this match and then phenomenal acting afterwards, where he's like
I'm done.
just like devastated. Yeah. Like,
Hmm.
because there's like this real element of like he probably thought like, you know, and I don't know this for a fact, but like there's probably a scenario where this would have been a one-off match and it's Kenny passing the torch and being like, "Yeah, I'll do the job to Will Ospreay. Like that'll be awesome. Sure, like he's great and like if he beats me, it'll legitimize him even more."
Hmm.
And like New Japan booking can sometimes those guys can be kind of dicks when it comes to what they want to do. But there maybe was a discussion of like this is a one-off and Will's gonna go over. And then like it just there's a real element of like, no, man, Will was just straight up told like you're losing. You're getting pinned. You're getting like beaten down for 40 minutes by the guy who doesn't even go here anymore.
Word.
And he's gonna take your title. This isn't a non-title one-on. Well, like he's beating you, he's pinning you, you're bleeding, he's taking your belt, you're not kicking out of his finisher. Like you're not gonna be the guy. Like we're not like you're not kicking out of the one-winged angel, and he's gonna take your title and leave. And like there's just a real element after watching that post match press conference and everything that happened beforehand where you're like, that must have actually kind of sucked, like for Will Ospreay. Like everything he went through, and then like the guy who hasn't wrestled in New Japan in years
Right.
just rolls through for one match, kicks your ass, takes your belt,
Takes your
and leaves.
fans, your money.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
and I think in the long term, like what they're doing is a really like smart, slow passing of the torch.
Yeah.
And Kenny's, I think, very smart when it comes to, booking matches or like booking matches in terms of like storytelling and how things should be done where they make a sensible payoff.
Sure.
But I think like the story surrounding this one match that they had and like the potential for where this could go,
Hmm.
because it like leaves Will Ospreay with this like, what do I even have? I'm not going to be able to just like challenge for the heavyweight title because I just got embarrassed in my home turf, or at least what he thought was his home. I think I made this like joke to you of like he was playing a home game, and
Hmm.
instead he was actually walking into the house that Kenny Omega built
Essentially, yeah.
and got whooped.
I
Like,
guess not to lose sight of any of this, like, you know, um, because I know how wrestling fans can be if we because we are gonna post this on YouTube and like already see the comments section saying no, Kenny he didn't build this house, it was Okada, it was Shinsuke, we get it, there's been other pillars,
yeah,
but
that's a
well,
valid argument. Like that's
and it
this
is a
is
valid
my
argument.
opinion. Like,
Yeah, it's just his opinion, but also like it's something that he helped get eyes on for people like us out here in America who maybe we don't appreciate the homegrown talent. Not saying Kenny isn't homegrown talent. I mean, he kind of is, but I get it. Okada, um, Naito, um, I know
yeah,
Ticking Time Bomb, like a lot of these
Kenta,
Bushi,
yeah.
Kenta, all these people, like who Ibushi, people who went the Young Lion route, who went to the dojo, got their ass beat, and made it to the top. They did build this house as well. The gold standard, man, geez, but that's one thing that fucked up there was like with Kota Ibushi,
Yeah.
like yes, New Japan can also be can help give you the platform to build your own house or build a pillar, build a house, but they can also tear it down, and that's something that I guess Kenny in a way has forgiven because they took forever to push him, or even though he was having these great matches and they weren't putting the title on him after the second because it
Hmm.
was a draw, and then he finally won, but then he lost it. It's an older veteran, which sucks, but he had to put him over because he was on the way out, and I get that. But like, I guess to my point too is like, yes, he built a version of his house, of his matches for other people who may not appreciate, you know, the the nationality and and the style that other people who were born and bred there in Japan and grew up through that dojo and saw everything. But he made me want to know Okada more. Man, we love Okada. We love to say Rainmaker. It's one of our favorite
Oh yeah,
phrases.
Okada's one of the best wrestlers of all time too. Like
Exactly.
this is
No,
not a
yeah.
one man list by any
Yes.
means.
But we love that they're giving Ospreay a chance. We love that. And hopefully they don't make the mistake they did with Kenny.
Yeah, I
And they didn't. They so far they haven't, in a
right,
way they
right.
haven't, kind of sort of. I mean, it sucks that basically he didn't lose the title, or he got kind of stripped, or they made like I forgot what happened. I really forgot already what happened during the pandemic when he was a champion. Um, you know, I hope he gets to hold that strap again. I think him and Okada have already had like a 6-star match, and I think they could continue to have 6-star matches in the
Hmm.
future. So like, tying in what you said, yeah, I think they're setting up to pass that torch to Will. And I hope it's true. And I think Gato's the head booker for New Japan, but also so is Rocky Romero in a way, but he's like the
Hmm.
English relations um guy. So I just hope they can work something that, it does, kind of perpetuate Ospreay to the top and keep him there for years to come. Kind of like they did with Okada. Okada's getting up there in age. I mean, he's still pretty young. He's still in his prime. But
Oh
we don't
yeah.
want. I don't. I like. I at least I know the stories. I don't know if you know the stories, but I don't want it to become where Inoki. It's Inoki wins. LOL. Because Inoki would book himself to win pretty much a lot of things. Obviously, he did
Yeah.
give the rub, to the right people and eventually, but it took some time. Even if it
Yeah.
meant like financial disaster or losing viewership and fans, but he got there. So I hope they do the right thing and continue to, diversify New Japan. Obviously, keep it the way they're planning on, which is keep opening the dojos and bringing in talent from all around the world to put them at the Tokyo Dome, so people can continue to watch the Tokyo Dome.
Oh
And for
yeah.
us who one day want to go watch that live, hopefully one of these years, because I know I want to be there, and I would love to see an a Tokyo Dome, a New Japan show, Wrestle Kingdom show live. I want to see, these shows that they do in New Japan. So yeah, I was like, I think the passing of the torch is very a valid point, and it's something I look forward to seeing.
Yeah, I did want to touch on Okada real briefly
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he was mentioned. I forget if it was in. I watched so many Will Ospreay interviews, but
Hmm.
that or maybe it was Dave Meltzer, but he was mentioned in an interesting way, which kind of made me think about the outcome of this match differently, or saw it from a different perspective of like Will Ospreay lost to Okada. Kenny Omega beat Okada. So with that logic, Will Ospreay is not going in this match, was never going to beat Kenny Omega, was never going to beat the guy that beat
Hmm.
the golden boy of New Japan.
Yeah.
Like, and I just think it's really cool to sort of Okada is like the bar, is like, and Kenny Omega like beat him. He set a new bar. And I think that's sort of where like Will Ospreay's arrogance, at least in the storyline, maybe in real life, I don't know, he's really fucking good. Like I'd probably be arrogant too.
Hmm.
But some of his arrogance of like Kenny's washed up, like making fun of him for wearing like the t-shirt when he was coming back from surgery,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like all
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff. Like there was a lot said where it was like, yeah, you might be underestimating this guy, man. Like he's like at least the way we were all thinking it is like he's still
Hmm.
Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
And like in this match, it felt like Kenny Omega like putting his foot down, saying like, "No, I'm still Kenny Omega. Like, you're not just gonna beat me because I'm a little older now and I had an injury. Like, I'm still the fucking king of New Japan. Like, I'm still really,
Hmm.
really good." And I think it's also like, yeah, I don't know. There's like something kind of badass about this guy who's like 10 years older, coming off an injury, being like 80% of me is still better than you at your best. Like, I love the story they're telling of like Kenny Omega now. Maybe he becomes the sort of arrogant one of like, yeah, I am better than Will Ospreay. Like,
Hmm.
Will Ospreay's not even that good. Did you see that match? Fucking whooped his ass for 40 minutes. Like that. This is the
Yeah.
guy. This is your guy. This is your guy. Doesn't seem like he's all that to me. Like there's just a lot of different ways they can go. And like I think we all know, hopefully, like this story is ending with Will Ospreay like beating Kenny Omega for some championship.
Hmm.
Who knows where things go.
Yeah, yeah.
But and eventually being passed the torch. And I think like maybe from like a behind the scenes creative side of just Kenny, I think being a good person of like he's kind of almost there to like take care of Will Ospreay, like to
Yeah.
make sure that Will Ospreay stays like now that he's lost the IWGP title and now that he's lost the US title, but like
Hmm.
making sure that he's still a big deal and like doesn't get pushed down the card.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, because like Will was saying, like when Kenny left, like Kenny pulled him aside and he was like, "Hey, you're gonna have to be the guy now. Like I was the guy for a long time. Now it's gonna be you." And from like a real life standpoint, I just think, oh, there's just so much, so many positives to take from this rivalry. And the match was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think like what they're building around it
Hmm.
has so much potential. And also just the Kenny Omega perspective of this guy who like he just couldn't leave it alone. Like
Yeah.
he couldn't leave New Japan. He
Yeah.
you could take Kenny Omega out of New Japan, but you could not take the New Japan out of Kenny Omega.
No, no.
He had it was like eating him up.
Yeah.
He's like seeing all these star ratings, which he mentioned in the AEW promo, like, and he's just like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, I need to go
Hmm.
back there and beat this guy. Like, I don't
Hmm.
need to beat him in America. I need to go to Japan and beat him in front of everyone who loves that company. I need to beat him
Yeah.
down.
Everyone
Like,
who here in New Japan, all the fans who loved him loved me first, essentially.
dude,
So,
and like
I
real
love
quick,
it.
like in one of Will Ospreay's interviews, they were asking him like, Kenny Omega is like one of the biggest stars New Japan has ever had. Like,
Hmm.
what are you going to do if the crowd is basically just fully behind him and is not interested in you doing anything in the match?
Hmm.
And he was like, well, then I'll probably act like a little bit more of a dick And if they cheer for me, then I'll probably, throw my hands up and like hype them up. Um, and I just thought that was really interesting because like it was something that I hadn't thought about when I was watching the match of like, yeah, who are the fans going to be rooting for? Like, is it going to be down the middle? Is it going to be
Yeah.
like, oh shit, Kenny Omega's back? Like, fuck this other guy. Who cares who's in the ring? Like, Kenny Omega's back. Like, we don't care who he's facing.
No matter who
Is
won,
it going
the
to be
crowd
like,
won, man.
um, is it like, oh, Kenny Omega, this is the guy that left, like the guy that
Yeah.
bailed on us? Like, fuck this guy. Like, Will Ospreay is our new favorite wrestler. And I just really appreciated that Will was kind of like, I'm just gonna go with it. Like, if they're booing me, I guess I'll play up like a little bit more of a heel. If they're cheering me, then I'll play up
Hmm.
a little bit more of a baby face, which he did really, really well. It made me feel bad for him and
Yeah.
like texting back and forth, like, stop the match, man. Like it's over. It's over. He's down. And yeah, it's just really cool. It was the type of match and storyline that I just felt was worth talking about because I think it's going to be really special.
Yeah, thank you for instigating and coordinating with me to talk about this because yeah, I think it's something that we should get out there because yes, we consume more than just AEW and um WWE, even though WWE is probably heading for disaster.
Yeah,
Uh,
given the recent news, we might be watching a lot more of New Japan. So
we'll be watching more indie stuff. I'm probably gonna convince Chris to go to some indie shows here in the city,
yeah, I'm in,
hopefully.
man. Send me the links. I'm ready to buy
Yeah,
tickets.
yeah,
I'm
let's do
ready.
it. Front row seats only, but gang,
Yeah.
baby. But that's pretty much going to do it here and now, ladies and gentlemen of the podcasting universe and world. We really appreciate you guys listening and take your time to listen and watch wherever you're, picking up our audio, our media. We really do appreciate it. If you like what you see, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us 5 stars on Spotify, give us the thumbs up on YouTube, on the tubes. If you really have any questions, I keep forgetting to put the email in to tell you to put the email in the damn description, but screw it. Again, I'm gonna share it on my Instagram and just message us, and let us know what you guys think about the current status of the main event of New Japan and really all of wrestling, because this is going to be a story that's going to be being followed. It started in 2023. It's probably going to end in 2023 and beyond. Actually, no, it could even go further than 2023, but we'll see. So, with that, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen of the podcasting universal world. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.